Ever wonder how you can find real, meaningful groups inside of complex, messy data? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on a really powerful algorithm that was designed to do just that. This is our explainer on optics, a tool that can turn data chaos into a picture that's crystal clear.
Okay, so first things first, take a look at this. How many different groups of points do you see? Your brain, it probably spots 3, maybe 4, pretty much instantly, right? But here's the thing. Teaching a computer to see those exact same groups, well, that's a surprisingly tough challenge, especially when their shapes and densities are all over the place. And that really gets us to the heart of the problem. You see, real-world data is almost never neat and tidy. The clusters we're trying to find often have totally different densities. Some are packed in really tight, while others are way more spread out. And this kind of variation can seriously trip up a lot of the standard clustering tools out there. Let's take a super popular algorithm, dbScan, for example. It's a fantastic tool, but it's got one major weakness. It forces you to use a single global setting for density across the board, and that puts you in a tough spot. If you tune it to find those really dense, tightly packed clusters, you're almost guaranteed to miss the sparse ones. But if you tweak it the other way to catch those spread out groups, it'll probably just mush all the dense clusters together into one big, useless blob. And this is where you can really see the difference. dbScan's one-size-fits-all approach kind of makes it blind to all that nuance in the data. Optics, on the other hand, was built from the ground up to be flexible. It actually adapts to the local density of the data, which lets it find the very clusters that dbScan would have missed completely.
So, the big question is, how in the world does optics pull this off? Well, it uses a really clever solution that kind of changes the whole game and fundamentally rethinks how we should even go about finding clusters in the first place.
The name itself is actually the perfect clue. Optics stands for ordering points to identifying the clustering structure. So instead of just jumping in and slapping labels on things, its main goal is to create a special, intelligent ordering of all the data points. And it's this ordering that reveals the deep density structure of the entire dataset. So here's the big idea. Optics takes all your data points and basically rearranges them into a single file line. But it's not a random lineup at all. The algorithm is smart. It makes sure that points that are close to each other in the actual data also end up as neighbors in this new sequence. Think of it like drawing a clever, density-aware treasure map of your entire dataset.
Now, to build this map, optics uses two brilliantly simple concepts as its fundamental building blocks. They're called core distance and reachability distance. Let's break them down.
Okay, first up is core distance. You just give the algorithm one setting, a number called min points. Then, for any point in your data, its core distance is just how far it has to reach out to find that minimum number of neighbors. So a tiny core distance means you're in a super crowded area, like a city center. A big core distance means you're way out in the quiet suburbs. Simple as that.
Next up, we have reachability distance. You can think of this as the cost of getting from one point to another. It's defined as whichever value is bigger, the actual straight-line distance between the 2 points, or the core distance of the point you're starting from. This little rule is so clever because it basically says you can't just teleport out of a dense cluster. You have to climb out of that dense neighborhood first, which helps smooth out the final map.
All right, and here is where it all comes together. Those two simple distance ideas allow optics to create its signature output, a visualization that literally makes the invisible cluster structure of your data completely visible.
So what the algorithm does is it essentially walks through the data, always moving to the very next closest point that it can reach. And this process creates that ordered path we talked about, almost like a guided tour that snakes its way through all the dense regions first before it ever dares to venture out into the sparser areas. That ordered path is then unrolled, kind of like a scroll, to create the algorithm's masterpiece, the reachability plot. The horizontal axis is just the order of the points from that walk we just saw, and the vertical axis plots the reachability distance for each point along the way. And this is where the magic happens.
And you know what? Reading this plot is incredibly intuitive. Like the slide says, clusters in your data just show up as valleys. Why? Well, because all the points inside a dense cluster are really close to each other, so their reachability distances are tiny, forming a valley. And those big peaks between the valleys, those are just the sparse, empty regions that separate the clusters.
And here it is, the big aha moment. You can see a perfect direct connection. Each and every cluster in that original scatter plot maps perfectly to a valley in the reachability plot below. That super tight cluster up top, it creates the deepest valley. The two looser, more spread out clusters, they create the wider, shallower valleys. It's like a visual fingerprint of your data's hidden structure.
So, even though this algorithm has been around since 1999, it is still incredibly relevant today. Let's quickly wrap up with the key takeaways and why you should definitely have optics in your data analysis toolkit.
So let's recap the big wins. First and foremost, it's a rock star at handling clusters of different densities. It gives you that amazing intuitive reachability plot for visual analysis. It can even show you hierarchical structures, clusters that are nested inside of other clusters. And, maybe best of all, you don't have to tell it how many clusters you're looking for ahead of time.
And you know the best part? It's not some obscure, hard-to-find tool. It is readily available. If you're a coder, you can find battle-tested versions in all the major libraries. For you Python folks, it's right there in scikit-learn and PyClustering. R programmers, you can find it in the dbScan package. And for Java developers, it's in popular frameworks like ELKI and Weka.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. By changing the question from what cluster does this point belong to what does the density structure of my data actually look like, optics gives us a much deeper, richer understanding. So the next time you're facing a complex data set, just ask yourself, what hidden structures could optics reveal?